Welcome back. We're live here in Ferguson, and we're talking more about the disturbing rant of police officer Dan Page. I want you to listen to what he had to say about domestic violence.
When the inner cities start to ignite, people are going to start killing people they don't like. And I'm going to warn the ladies on something. And this always gets me in trouble, but I got to tell you, this domestic violence stuff, every time a man turns around and gets jammed up by his wife on this, you are heading for troubles, ladies. A man can be arrested now for domestic property damage, domestic peace disturbance, domestic destruction of property, so forth and so forth. And so how can you do that in your own house? You can be arrested for domestic trespassing. I've seen people with lines down the middle of the house. Stupid. If you don't like each other that much, just kill each other and get it over with. Problem solved. Get it done. Don't be wasting cops' time. Just shoot each other and get it over with.
That wasn't harsh. Joined now by Pate, criminal defense attorney and constitutional attorney. Also Mel Robbins, CNN commentator and legal analyst. Also here, Chris Chestnut, an attorney who represented the family of Jonathan Ferrell, the unarmed former college football player who was shot dead by police last year, and Danny Savalas, a CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney. So you guys know about my first interaction with this officer. That was on Monday when we were in a place where they told us the media should be. They gave us, and then he came through the crowd and started pushing the crowd and then pushing me as well. But as you see, he had his hand around me, so I couldn't even move away from him as he's pushing. And I'm showing this because this is how you get the best view of him, to see that it's the same guy in the video that you see in front of the podium. So I want to play another. That was a clip of him. So what do you guys make? Who here thinks that many law enforcement officers in this area are scrubbing their social media sites right now? Mel, you think?
I think all of them are. You know what I find unbelievable, Don, is how was he on the force for 34 years and had this point of view? Because if he's speaking out in a public forum, he's clearly said this kind of stuff, I would imagine, to his colleagues, Don.
Yeah, and it's hard to believe that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this underscores the culture of law enforcement in that community. And so you wonder why the community is in outrage, why there's marching, is because this is the norm. These are the officers that are policing communities that don't even believe in the law. So you have a law enforcement officer who not only doesn't like the law, clearly doesn't like people. He doesn't like women, he doesn't like black people, he doesn't like brown people.
Yeah,
that's a problem in this department.
Don, I mean, I think we should wait a minute before we say this is the norm. I haven't seen a lot of other videos like this, and after all, if we did, we wouldn't be focusing on this one. Look, here's the deal. Police officers, yes, they do have a constitutional right to free speech. They just don't have that right to free speech and the right to keep their job. This is a Supreme Court case. Paige can help me out on this one on my con law, but the rule is pretty clear. Police officers can speak to a matter of public concern, but if they also create disharmony within their community, within the job, then the government can regulate the speech of its employees, even if that speech that they couldn't regulate in a private citizen.
So then what is our defense for the people who've been marching here the last 2 weeks, who've had bullets fired at them, who've had the National Guard called in on them, who've been subject to military, paramilitary policing?
Okay,
there's a First Amendment right.
Okay, so you asked the question. I'll answer that question for you. So your initial statement was that this is going on all through the police department. I think that's quite a leap.
They shot an unarmed man.
You think there are that many YouTube videos out there of someone with a rant like this?
No, I don't think they're that careless.
Okay, well then that's what I wanted to establish.
In all fairness, Chris, I think most people will realize this. Most members of law enforcement are good, effective law enforcement agents, whether it be male or female. They're good people. There are a few that make all of them look bad. Paige,
I agree in general.
Okay, Pate, though, there is the First Amendment, and I addressed that with the chief, and he said, yes, he has a First Amendment right, but it is concerning as a member of law enforcement that he's out there appearing to be glorifying killing people.
Right. I mean, there are two issues here. One, yes, the officer clearly has a First Amendment right. He can believe whatever he wants to believe. He can go to groups like this, and he can make statements about what he believes. However, he works for a police department. He has sworn to a particular code of conduct that he must follow. And it's not just his belief, it's his behavior. When you hear comments like that about domestic violence from an officer that's being sent to residences to deal with domestic violence, that's a problem for the department, that's a problem for the city, and it's a problem they need to take care of.
He's
Okay,
threatening
so
to kill
listen,
people on live camera.
I have. Okay, Chris, hang on. There are people who are defending him. I'm reading on social media. I've been reading articles since this happened. If you guys can give me a show of hands, is there anyone on the panel who defends what this officer is saying and thinks that he has the right to say it? Anybody? No one. Okay. So
Not if he wants to
I think he
be
has
a
the First
police
Amendment right to
officer.
say whatever he wants.
Well, he has the right to say it.
Not if he wants to be
and
a
as my
police
producer
officer.
pointed out to me, certainly not the people behind me. I want to play another clip of Officer Dan Page speaking at the Oath Keepers meeting back in April. Listen.
I personally believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord Savior, but I'm also a killer. I've killed a lot, and if I need to, I'll kill a whole bunch more. If you don't want to get killed, don't show up in front of me. It's that simple. I have no qualms with it. God did not raise me to be a coward.
Mel, it's shocking because he's a veteran police officer. He's speaking publicly about this group. He's not trying to hide it. He's with a microphone doing it in front of a camera, yet the rest of the police department is saying they didn't know anything about it.
I find that hard to believe, quite honest. They might not have known about this speech, Don, but this is what I was getting at earlier. When somebody has beliefs that they're this proud of, this guy's not only just kind of saying what he believes, he's preaching to these people. And you can guarantee if he's been in the force for 34 years, he's been around cadets. I'm sure he has said similar things in passing to other people on the force. And what I find to be so alarming is the fact that and look, there's no evidence of this. I'm just telling you from my gut. If there's a guy that believes this strongly in this kind of awful, derogatory, horrific kind of stuff that he's talking about, you stand in front of me, I'm going to shoot you. If you're in a domestic violence relationship, kill each other so I don't have to deal with you as a police officer. You know he has said this stuff to people in the past.
Moreover, he's admitted to killing
Chris.
people. That's what's most concerning. He admitted to killing people. Don, you're lucky to be alive. He said he'd do it again.
This next one is for you. I do have people worried about my safety here. I want to play this. This is what he said about President Obama.
I said, I want to go find where that illegal aliens claim to be my president, my undocumented president lives at. So I flew to Africa, and right there, and I went to our undocumented president's home. He was born in Kenya.
Our undocumented president's home in Kenya. Do you think his political opinions have any bearing on what kind of a police officer he would be? I mean, how many times, Chris, does this have to be knocked down? The president is a resident of the United States, was born in the United States, was not born in Kenya, and for this guy to be propagating that as a police officer, I mean, what gives here, Chris?
You know, his political views are of no consequence to me, but I'll tell you what is startling and what is concerning is that this officer doesn't believe, does he not believe in the law, he doesn't believe in documentation. So this is an officer who would effectuate a stop, absent probable cause, probably not identify the driver, and if the driver were to assert his rights, he'd either arrest them or, as he's admitted earlier, kill them. So this is not the type of person that should have a gun or a badge, nor is it the type of law enforcement agency, and they need to overhaul it. I'm not surprised at all that we're having this issue in Ferguson now because of the culture in this law enforcement agency.
Chris, I gotta ask you.
All
I
right.
just want to make sure I understand your logic. You're saying that because he believes what everyone knows to be a ridiculous view about where President Obama was born, that makes him likely on a routine car stop to shoot and kill the person he stopped. I just want to be clear. Is that
Well, it goes to rationality.
No,
I
to
mean,
be
if
emphatic,
he believes something that's not true and that's not
he ignores
rational.
the facts. He ignores the evidence. He ignores the facts. Clearly, the
let's
president
stick
has
with the
documentation.
fact.
It's
Well,
not
that's
political.
That's a good
It's
point,
not
Chris.
political.
Let's stick with
this
the
is
facts.
asinine.
And the facts are, under the Constitution, again, he probably has the right to say those things, but he is probably not fit constitutionally to hold the office
Danny,
of police officer.
Then we agree.
Danny.
Don, in this situation,
Danny, hang on, hold on, Paige. Danny, if you have someone who believes something that clearly is not true or logical, I think Chris makes a very good point here. What is it that would make him believe something that anybody would say. If someone disagrees with him and he believes in his head that it's absolutely true when there's all evidence out there showing that it's not true, I think Chris makes a very good point here.
Don, we agree on most of what we're saying. What he says probably renders him constitutionally unfit to serve as a police officer because using the standard, he would create disharmony. Well, we don't get to just apply our own personal common sense. We have to apply the law. It's all we have, Chris. And if he creates that disharmony, Don, we agree. He is not fit to hold the office. But we can't extrapolate just because he has some odd views, which are now proven to be, admittedly, they're laughable.
Here's the truth and the reality of this moment right now. I've got to get to break. I'll continue this conversation on the other side. We'll be right back. My panelists back with me: Paige Pate, Mel Robbins, Chris Chestnut, and Danny Savalas. Okay, guys, let's hear what he says about police officers, because here, what was most concerning to the chief, obviously the bigoted remarks, that was concerning, but what he says about killing people, and he is a man with a badge and a gun. Obviously that is very concerning to the chief. Let's listen to what he said about police.
Policemen are very cynical. I know I am. I don't trust nobody, and I hate everybody. So I hate y'all too. I hate everybody. I'm into diversity. I kill everybody. I don't care.
Paige Pate, you were trying to make a point before we went to break. He believes in diversity. He'll kill anybody.
Right. I mean, Don, I have a much bigger problem with the comments this officer makes about what a police officer may be encountering, the fact that he's willing to kill people, his positions on domestic violence, things that affect his job. However, I have no problem defending his right to say whatever he wants to say about the president, as misguided as it may be, because that doesn't directly affect the department. So he has a right to do that. But when he's talking about his job, possessing a firearm, using a firearm, then it's problematic and he doesn't belong on the force.
Don, I think it's shocking. The irony here is shocking that we're defending the First Amendment rights of this officer. What about the First Amendment rights of the protesters who've been shot with rubber bullets, who've had assault rifles pointed at them with these paramilitary policing? I mean, the only thing that was missing in Ferguson was drones. So can we defend the rights of the people?
Yeah.
I guess not.
That's a very good question. Can we move on now? Did everyone get this out of their system? I think everyone is in agreement that what this officer said was horrific, especially the part about killing and where he appears to be glorifying killing. Let's move on now. Let's talk about the racial breakdown of the grand jury that will weigh the evidence against Officer Darren Wilson. It was released today. It is comprised of 3 African Americans and 9 whites. Thoughts, Mel?
Well, I was talking about this with somebody earlier today, and I'm not surprised that we know the breakout, because all it takes is a reporter to camp outside and watch the people going in. But I still hold out hope. I'm not as cynical as some of the folks that are on the panel tonight, but I still hold out hope that the fact that there are 3 African Americans and 7 white folks on this jury, or this grand jury, that they can actually look at the evidence that's presented and make the call based on the facts and the evidence and the law, and not have this divide along race lines like everybody wants to predict that it is going to.
Danny, how much does race really matter on a hang on, Chris. Danny, how much does race really matter on a jury, more or less than people think, maybe?
Well, it's the grand jury process that I think is concerning. See, the problem that everyone's been complaining about, they've been complaining about transparency and how the investigation's been opaque. Now they're submitting this case to a grand jury, and wait until people find out how secret grand juries are. The other thing grand juries are criticized for is that they're sort of a punting by the prosecution. If there isn't an indictment, if there's no true bill, the prosecutor could theoretically argue, well, that's the grand jury's fault. So I was a little concerned today when they actually released the makeup of the grand jurors, when the grand jury secrecy is something that is usually very well preserved, and you try not to reveal any information about the identities of the grand jurors. Overall, those people that were satisfied when they learned that a grand jury would convene, maybe they won't be so satisfied when they find out just how secret grand juries are. We will hear virtually nothing about what goes on. And releasing the information about race goes towards releasing the identity of the grand jurors. And I think that is moving on a slippery slope. We must protect and preserve the identity of grand jurors if we want to maintain the independence of the grand jury system, which is already very much criticized, and understandably so, because it's so secret.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, clearly the grand jury is not reflective of the community, but more concerning for me is who's presenting the evidence to the grand jury. Here we have a state attorney who's obviously biased. He's got problems with nepotism in his office. The investigation is probably skewed.
Can I talk to you about that? Can I talk to you about that,
Sure.
Chris? I spoke to the governor every single day. Just before I came on to do this show, and I was doing live shots earlier for Anderson and for Aaron, people were coming up to me saying, you got to get the videotape of the prosecutor McCullough, Bob McCullough doing this. You should know about this. Every day someone says, Bob McCullough cannot be objective. He should be removed. The governor said yesterday, it is not going to happen. So what happens at the end of this? Bob McCullough's in place. People don't get the outcome that they think they're going to get. Then what? Then what?
Thank God for Eric Holder. That's where we're going to get justice, because this isn't, you know, we had problems in Charlotte in the Farrell case getting an indictment initially. We cannot expect a fair, just presentation of evidence on their own. The homicide detectives were officers with the shooting officer. And then we have a state attorney who's already articulated bias, that he's supporting the officer, that he doesn't believe in the victim.
But Chris, this is the grand jury process, Chris. This isn't a
I'm not knocking
trial.
it. I'm just saying we need to manage expectations.
You are knocking
it.
There's
He's already told us he's not going to get an
You are
indictment.
totally knocking this, and it's
One at a
totally
time.
different than
One
a
at a
jury
time. Go ahead,
trial.
Mel.
System.
Totally different than a jury trial. This is how it works. The prosecutors put on their case. The defendant has the opportunity to testify. The defense attorneys aren't there, and they decide whether or not there's probable cause to move forward. And by the way,
But it
I
could be
think
an
the
attorney general.
prosecutor's already shown his hand, because he could have simply just he could have bypassed the grand jury altogether. Danny was already alluding to this, and the fact that he's going
But
to
they
the
could have
grand
arrested
jury,
the
in my
officer.
mind,
In Charlotte,
Of
they
course they
immediately
could have.
arrested the shooting officer. Here, there's
Look,
been no arrest
okay.
weeks later.
This is
Pate,
very
Pate, go
unusual.
ahead.
Yes, the district attorney in this case is doing something that rarely happens. He is presenting the defense case. He is allowing this officer to testify. He's already told us he's going to let the grand jury hear all of the evidence. That does not usually happen in a grand jury setting. It's usually the prosecutor's show. They're going to put on their best evidence. They're going to try to drive a conviction, and that is not what's happening here. Now, Don, back to your original question, I think race matters. I think it matters a lot. What's different from a grand jury and a trial jury is you have no right to an unbiased grand jury. These people could have walked in there already with preconceived notions about what happened in this case, and they're going to sit on that grand jury. You can't excuse them. So I think it makes a big difference who's on that
Nor
grand
can we
jury.
ignore the release of the video. I mean, they're tainting the jury.
We've got to
pool of
move
an hour.
on. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Paige. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Danny. Happy Friday.